stand in the table. Leicester City now second from bottom, 2 points off safety. Mark, what went wrong with Rodgers?
It's been coming all season, this Dan, right from the start of the season. Early on, August, September time, there was rumours about his future. He's been unfortunate, Rodgers, in the sense that the club he joined isn't the club he's at now, and you can point to the pandemic. The Leicester owners, their money is in duty free, and the pandemic stopped everyone travelling. They've had a really bad couple of years, and it's affected Leicester. It's affected their recruitment. They've sold some good players. They've not replaced them properly, and I think Brendan Rodgers has been speaking about the lack of proper signings for a while, but he began to sound like he was complaining, that he was moaning. The fans were not happy with him. I was at the game against Chelsea when there was almost scuffles breaking out between fans that wanted him to stay and fans that wanted him to go. So it just felt like he'd kind of run out of road at Leicester. But he's been managing a diminished squad, and he's got his better players, his long-serving players like Jamie Vardy just can't do it anymore. So apart from James Maddison, there's nobody at Leicester that you can really hang your hat on and say that they're good enough for where Leicester want to be. So I think Brendan Rodgers, unfortunately for him, he's just presided over a team that has been declining for a while. And it's not really his fault that it's been declining, but he's part of that because he's the coach, and he's not been able to get the best out of the players they brought in.
You like Rodgers, Craig?
I think he's a good coach. I can't add much to what Mark said. You can't sell. You get rid of all your best players. The Chilwells of Fafanas, there's been a list of them. One of the best, most solid keepers, and Kasper Schmeichel goes to France. Mm-hmm. You replace him with an understudy and Ward, basically. You bring in the likes of Wout Vaz, who every time I see him play makes mistakes. And as Augie said, Jamie Vardy, who's bailed Leicester out a lot of times on the counter-attack when they've been under pressure with that ball over the top, just is at the stage of his career where he's a bit part player now. But I did still think with Rodgers' experience that he would be able to sort of navigate them somewhere closer to the middle of the table until they maybe resolved it. But he's not been able to do it. And defensively, they've been a shambles. I mean, the amount of goals they've lost from set pieces over the last 12 to 18 months has been incredible. But the recruitment in the summer was non-existent. And then you're asking a manager to go out and just keep churning performances from the same players. And it comes back to bite you. And what are they, as we speak, second bottom?
Yeah, I just showed it, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't looking.
Well, what were you doing?
I'll look at it tomorrow. Day late.
Speaking of a day late, if you want to catch up with the latest edition of the Gab and Jules podcast, you can do so. No Jules.
This is getting silly. I mean, it's either the Gab and Jules podcast or it's not.
It doesn't seem to be. Nadem joins Gab today. Be sure to check it out. Just a reminder how things stand at the very top of the table. Arsenal remain 8 points clear of Manchester City in second. Arsenal favoured just to take the title away from the defending champions. There are 9 games remaining then for Arteta's side, and Arsenal fans are starting to look through these, aren't they, and thinking where they can get the wins and where they might drop points. It's all about getting through April, isn't it?
It's one game at a time.
All right, you're not Arteta.
It's cliche. it's cliche.
If you can get through April and still be top,
yeah,
then surely.
I think you get through Newcastle, of course. You have City, Chelsea. Well, we have to see what. I don't expect much change from them. But then going to St James's Park is never easy, especially Newcastle with top 4 in their sides. We've spoken about the crowd and the atmosphere up there. And then Brighton themselves are no pushovers. We see how they fare between now and then, whether they have top 4 still realistically in their sides. But you'd expect Arsenal that if you're top after Newcastle and all you have to do is win your remaining 3 games, you expect Arsenal to do that.
See, Forest and Wolves at the end looks like, but I've been in that scenario with Derby, and if you are teetering on relegation in the last game or two, trust me, you'll get players absolutely scrapping like they've never scrapped before,
right.
And that can be difficult.
But if they're safe, if they're safe after being that close to the bottom 3 all season long, then they're just down tools.
I think if they win the next 3 games,
yes,
and don't lose to City, I think that's pretty much them over and gone. If they pick up 9 points and then, obviously if they beat City, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But if they don't lose to City, I think it's going to be very difficult for City to peg that back with, 5 games or so to go.
And of course, it's kind of a compliment to the season that Arsenal have put together, that's the narrative, Mark, going into these final 9 matches, as opposed to maybe if you hadn't followed Arsenal that closely this season, oh, they're teetering on the edge, they're going to drop points, it's all going to fall apart. We felt that could happen, and it just hasn't because they've been so good.
Yeah, they held in there fantastically. I was at Everton when they lost 1-0, and I thought that might be the start of the slide, losing at Everton away, but they've picked up, and I think they picked up six straight wins after that, maybe 7. They just look formidable right now, and they're playing with a real joy, no sense of nerves, no sense of panic. But Liverpool away this weekend is for me, there's 2 games they can lose now. I think they can lose at Liverpool and lose at Man City. And I think if City win the game in hand, that could be enough for Arsenal to slip up. So it's a massive game at Anfield. It's a tough game. If they lose that, what will their confidence be like going to the Etihad? So I do think it's still live. Arsenal are the favourites, but I do think that those 2 away games, Liverpool and City, could derail them, despite the fact that they might not lose again after that. They might win 7 of the last 9 games, but if they lose at City and Liverpool, that could be it.
That game after Everton, the game after they lost at Everton was that Villa game.
Yeah, that's Jorginho game.
And when it looked as if it was going against them and going away from them, and you thought, I think if they had lost that one and hadn't came back, Jorginho with his first goal, and then Martinelli with the 3-1 on the counter just to seal it. But, Ramsdale made some great saves, I think, a bit from Bailey and 1 or 2 others. You felt if they hadn't dragged themselves back in that game in 2 straight defeats, that could have been it for them. And that was just absolutely huge for them. I personally think they'll go to Anfield and win.
Yeah.
I think there's a big gulf between these 2 sides this season. And I can see them going to Anfield. I mean, it's not a given, but I can see them going to Anfield if they play in the manner in which they have for most of the season. I could see them blowing Liverpool away because Liverpool they're just a shadow of their former self. It's 1 or 2 of the other games that when you're expecting them to win, it was like the Bournemouth game a couple of weeks ago when they dragged themselves back from the depths of despair with that late Reece Nelson goal. And then even the Leeds game for 45 minutes, I think it's 1 or 2 games where they might get a little blasé about it, would worry me more than the real big games.
We'll say thank you very much to Mark. Before we let you go, Mark, you've got to show us the picture your head's been covering for this whole show. What is that behind you?
It's my daughter made. I know I can't even move my head, can I? There you go.
Oh, you get such a big head, Ogden.
Yeah, it's my daughter made a list when she was about 6 or 7, saying what I couldn't do in her room in terms of. I don't want to read out what it says because I don't think it's broadcastable, but.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, good. Teaching your 6-year-old well, Mark. Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.